My family demanded I give my house to my golden sister and tried breaking in when I refused. I'm a 45-year-old senior software engineer at one of the top IT companies in Silicon Valley. Right now, my hands are still shaking as I write this, processing what just happened with my family. I feel the need to share my story and get an outside perspective because I'm at my wit's end. My sister, Rachel, 38, has always been the golden child of the family. Meanwhile, I've been the perpetual black sheep, the odd one out. Rachel was everything I wasn't: bubbly, charming, and blessed with perfect blonde hair that caught everyone's attention. I was quiet, reserved, and far more interested in science experiments than small talk. It was no secret that my parents favored Rachel. They never even tried to hide it, and the difference in how we were treated was obvious from the start. Looking back, I can see how early the pattern was set, and to help you understand, let me take you back to my childhood. When I was 8, I won my first school science competition. I created a functional model of the solar system, complete with orbital patterns, and my teacher was so impressed that she called my parents directly. "They must be so proud," she said. Pride? Not quite. "Rachel has her dance recital that day," Mom said matter-of-factly when I told her about the award ceremony. "She gets nervous without us watching." She said this while braiding Rachel's hair, not even sparing me a glance. It didn't matter that I had worked for weeks on my project, or that I had accomplished something worth celebrating. Rachel's dance recital, no matter how trivial, took precedence. By my 10th birthday, the favoritism had become impossible to ignore. I had spent weeks dropping hints about wanting a microscope, only to unwrap a frilly pink dress. "But Mom, I hate dresses," I protested. "Nonsense," she said with a smile. "You look just like Rachel." It was a complete miss. As we got older, the gap between us only widened. In middle school and high school, I buried myself in books and experiments, while Rachel breezed through life on her charm and good looks. When she brought home C+ grades, my parents praised her for trying. When I brought home straight A's, they barely noticed. The state science fair during my senior year still stings when I think about it. I had spent months perfecting a project on sustainable biofuels and was over the moon when I won first place. That night at dinner, I tried to share my excitement. "I won first place," I announced. Mom barely looked up from her plate. "That's nice, dear," she said before turning to Rachel. "Honey, have you decided on a prom dress yet? We need to start shopping soon." Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. While Rachel's participation ribbons from dance recitals were displayed proudly in the living room, my state-winning trophy collected dust on a forgotten shelf. The college admissions process was the final nail in the coffin of my relationship with my parents. When I received my acceptance letter to a top tech university, along with a full scholarship, I rushed into the living room, waving the letter. "Mom! Dad! I got in! Full ride and everything!" I exclaimed, beaming with pride. "That's nice, dear," Mom said absently, flipping through a magazine. "Rachel, didn't you need help picking out your prom dress?" Once again, my moment of triumph was dismissed without a second thought. College became my escape. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. My passion for technology wasn't seen as weird or boring, it was celebrated. I threw myself into computer science and thrived in ways I never imagined. Rachel, on the other hand, struggled through community college, often complaining about how hard it was. "I don't know how you do it, Carla," she said during one of our rare phone calls. I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to tell her that it might be easier if she partied less and studied more. Instead, I muttered something vaguely encouraging and changed the subject. During my sophomore year, Rachel announced she was engaged to her high school boyfriend, David. Their wedding was everything my parents had dreamed of: grand, elegant, and picture-perfect. I was forced into yet another pink bridesmaid dress, standing awkwardly in family photos while Rachel glowed beside her new husband. During the reception, Mom leaned over and whispered to me, "Isn't this perfect? This is what every mother dreams of for her daughter." I wanted to ask if she had ever dreamed of anything for me, but I stayed silent. After all, it was Rachel's day. While Rachel followed the script of my parents' ideal life, marrying young, having kids, and playing the role of the perfect wife, I poured myself into my career. I started as a junior developer at a small tech firm, working weekends and late nights. When the company was acquired by a major corporation, I was one of the few employees retained. From there, I climbed the corporate ladder, working my way up to senior software engineer. Meanwhile, Rachel and David were busy showing off their new cars and exotic vacations on social media. They had 2 children, Sophie and Nathan, and every family conversation revolved around their latest accomplishments. Sophie got the lead in her school play. Nathan made the t-ball team. Meanwhile, every time I tried to share my own achievements, the response was always the same. "That's nice, dear." Last year, after decades of hard work, I finally achieved a lifelong dream. I bought a beautiful 4-bedroom home in a fantastic neighborhood. When I called my parents to share the news, I was bursting with excitement. "Mom, Dad, I bought a house," I exclaimed. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "A house?" Mom said slowly. "All by yourself?" "Yes, all by myself," I replied, my enthusiasm dimming. "Well, that's nice," she said, her tone uncertain. And just like that, my achievement, 20 years in the making, was reduced to a footnote. The day I told my parents about my new house, their reaction was lukewarm at best. "It's such a big house for one person," Mom finally said, her disapproval practically oozing through the phone. "What will you do with all that space?" "I'll enjoy it, Mom. It's mine." "Well," she replied, her tone still dripping with judgment, "I suppose if that's what you want." "Oh. Did I tell you Sophie lost her first tooth yesterday?" Her abrupt shift to Rachel's latest family update stung, but I let it slide. The months after buying my home were a whirlwind. Between work and settling in, I poured myself into making every corner a reflection of who I am. The master bedroom became my sanctuary, the second bedroom my home office, the third a cozy library, and the fourth my personal laboratory for side projects. As I settled into my space, I noticed a shift in my family dynamics. My parents started calling less frequently, and when they did, there was an odd tension in their voices. It all came to a head last week when Mom called and, in her sickliest sweet voice, said, "Carla, dear, we're having a family dinner on Sunday. You'll come, won't you? We need to talk about something important. In my family, we need to talk rarely ends well." But I couldn't have imagined what was waiting for me at that dinner. Rachel's children were running wild, screaming and laughing, while her husband, David, nervously cleared his throat. We'd barely finished dinner when Dad finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Carla," he began, clearing his throat, "we need to talk about your house." My stomach sank. "What about my house?" "Well, you see, sweetie," he said, glancing at Mom for backup, "that big house of yours, it's really too much for just one person." I stiffened. "Dad, we've been over this. I like my house. It's mine." Mom jumped in, her tone dripping with condescension. "What your father is trying to say is that Rachel and her family need more space. The kids are growing, and their apartment is getting cramped." I turned to Rachel, who was suddenly very interested in her plate. "Rachel?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. Mom continued before Rachel could speak. "Since you're single and childless, it just makes sense. You ought to give your house to Rachel and her family." I stared at them, waiting for someone to yell "gotcha!" and reveal it was all a joke. But their expectant faces told me otherwise. "You can't be serious," I finally said. "Now, Carla," Mom replied, her tone patronizing, "don't be selfish. Rachel needs the space more than you do." "Selfish?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How is it selfish to keep the house I worked hard for and paid for myself?" Dad chimed in, his voice stern. "It's your sisterly duty to help in times of need." I turned back to Rachel. "What do you have to say about this?" Rachel finally met my eyes and shrugged. "Well, it would be nice to have more space for the kids. And it's not like you're using all those rooms anyway." Her words hit like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe it. They were treating me like I was the unreasonable one, like I was in the wrong for not handing over my hard-earned home. No, I said firmly, rising from the table. Absolutely not. I'm not giving up my house. Think about it, Carla, Dad called after me as I grabbed my coat. Family should come first. I didn't look back. The aftermath of that dinner has been a nightmare. At first, I ignored the endless calls and texts from my parents and Rachel. But then the flying monkeys arrived. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly felt compelled to weigh in on my life choices. Aunt Beatrice was the first. Your poor sister needs a proper home for her children, and you're living all alone in that big, empty house. Shame on you, she scolded, cutting me off when I tried to explain. In my day, family helped family. We didn't hoard our resources like misers. And then came the kicker. If you're not going to use all that space, you should at least consider donating your eggs. It's not like you're using them anyway. I almost dropped the phone in shock. Before I could respond, she continued, you're not getting any younger, you know. Tick-tock. Great Aunt Edna chimed in via voicemail. Carla, dear, it's not too late to find a nice man and settle down. Then you'd need that big house. Your sister has a family, what do you need 4 bedrooms for? Uncle Robert texted me a string of unsolicited advice about how I should manage my excess space, while other relatives took turns offering increasingly outrageous opinions. It seemed everyone had a theory about why I didn't deserve my house and how I should do the right thing. The texts kept coming even after I got home. I've started staying late at work just to avoid the constant buzzing of my phone. Even though I blocked several family members, the guilt trips and unsolicited judgments keep pouring in from new numbers. But tonight feels different. Call it paranoia or intuition, but I can't shake the sense that something unusual is brewing. Rachel's last message haunts me. You'll see reason eventually, one way or another. Am I being selfish, Reddit? Should I risk being shunned by my family to stand my ground? Or should I give in to keep the peace? And above all, should I be concerned about Rachel's ominous message? 2 weeks have passed since I first posted about my family trying to coerce me into giving up my house. I never expected things to escalate the way they did. What happened yesterday morning still has me shaken, and I need to share it with you. I've been working from home for the past few days, nursing a mild cold at my boss's insistence. Nothing serious, but enough to justify taking it easy. Around 10 a.m., I was on a video conference with my team when I heard a noise that made my blood run cold. Someone was trying to open my front door. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then came the unmistakable jingle of keys and hushed murmurs. I muted my mic and crept to the window, heart pounding. What I saw left me speechless. My parents, Rachel, and David were on my porch, and a moving truck was parked in my driveway. When I moved in last year, my parents helped, and apparently, they'd made copies of my keys. Mom was holding a set in her hand as they tried to let themselves in. I flung the door open, startling them. Carla! Mom gasped, almost dropping the keys. We thought you'd be at work. You thought I'd be at work, so you decided to break into my house? I said incredulously. Dad shifted uncomfortably while Rachel stepped forward, bristling with self-righteousness. You're being completely unreasonable about this, Carla, she snapped. We thought if we just took the initiative. It all started to unravel from there. Furniture from Rachel's apartment was already loaded into the moving truck. They'd planned to move her family in while I was gone. Rachel added, as if it justified everything, we were just going to wait for you to come home and explain. No, you weren't, I yelled, pointing to the truck. You were planning to move in behind my back while I wasn't here. At that moment, I noticed movement across the street. My neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, was watching everything from her window. She held up her phone and mouthed, "Police?" I gave her a grateful nod and turned back to my family. I've called the police, I said, my voice trembling but firm. You wouldn't. Dad sneered. Your own family? As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. A patrol car pulled up moments later, and my family's faces went pale. 2 officers approached, surveying the scene.
One of them glanced at the moving truck and asked, "Is there a problem here?"
"Yes, officer," I said, doing my best to stay calm.
"These people were trying to break into my home." "Carla!" Mom wailed. "How could you?" The officers turned to my family.
"Is this true?" one asked, raising a hand to silence my dad's stammered excuses. What followed was both gratifying and heartbreaking. The officers took down everyone's IDs, photographed the moving truck, and confiscated the duplicate keys. They made it clear that no arrests would be made this time, but if anyone tried this again, charges would be filed. As my family left, Rachel turned to glare at me one last time. "You'll regret this, Carla," she hissed.
"You'll end up old and alone." I closed the door behind them and sank onto my couch, trembling. But the day wasn't over yet. An hour later, I got a call from someone unexpected, my Aunt Maggie, my mom's sister.
"Carla," she said gently, "I heard what happened. There's something you need to know about why they're really after your house." What she told me was equal parts shocking and illuminating. Maggie works at the bank where my family does their business, and she's been aware of some alarming trends. It turns out Rachel and David have been living way beyond their means. Their fancy cars, lavish vacations, and constant shopping sprees were funded by debt. To make matters worse, David has a severe gambling addiction that has drained their accounts for years.
But the bombshell? My parents aren't doing much better.
A few years ago, they lost a significant amount of money in a pyramid scheme. Their finances are in shambles, and their plan was to move in with Rachel and David after strong-arming me into handing over my house. "I confronted your mother about it last year," Maggie revealed.
"That's why she stopped talking to me. I'd been watching this train wreck in slow motion, and I couldn't stay quiet anymore."
Suddenly, everything made sense.
Their relentless push to take my house wasn't just about space, it was about survival.
They needed my house as both a home and a source of income to bail themselves out. Since that call, I've spent the day installing security cameras, changing my locks, and documenting everything that happened. I'm even considering filing a restraining order, just to protect myself further. Aunt Maggie has been a lifeline, helping me see the bigger picture and offering advice on how to handle this mess. For now, I'm trying to stay calm and focus on what's next. At Aunt Maggie's suggestion, I decided to engage a private investigator to get to the bottom of everything. She believed there was more to this mess than we already knew, and she was right.
Living through this feels like being stuck in a terrible soap opera. How did this become my life? Once we have all the information from the investigator, I'll provide another update.
For now, I've taken every precaution I can: security cameras, new locks, and detailed notes on everything that's happened. While I feel secure for now, I can't help but wonder what other secrets my family might be hiding. I am utterly floored by what our private investigator, Diana, uncovered. Yesterday, she met with Aunt Maggie and me at a quiet cafe far from anywhere my family frequents. What she revealed was far worse than I had imagined.
The attempted break-in at my house was just the tip of the iceberg.
Diana confirmed that David not only has a gambling addiction but has been living a double life for years. For the past 2 years, he's been having an affair with none other than my cousin, Jenny. While Rachel and my parents were struggling financially, David was splurging on weekend getaways, luxury hotels, and expensive gifts, all for Jenny. "Look at these credit card statements," Diana said, sliding a folder across the table. It included purchases from Tiffany's, charges from the Grand Hotel, and frequent trips to Las Vegas. All of these expenses aligned perfectly with Jenny's social media posts from the same places. And then it got worse. The money David used to fund his affair wasn't entirely his. Diana discovered that my parents had been lending him money, believing it was for a business investment. Instead, he was using their funds to maintain his second life and pay off gambling debts.
But the most jaw-dropping revelation?
David had opened a Cayman Islands bank account, claiming it was for a high-yield investment opportunity. In reality, he'd been siphoning money from my parents' retirement account to cover his losses and keep up appearances. "Your parents' retirement account has been nearly drained," Diana explained, passing over another set of documents. "They've been relying on credit cards, believing David's promises that a big return on investment is just around the corner.
The most damning evidence was a series of emails between David and Jenny.
They were actively planning to use my house as collateral for a loan, intending to hide their tracks before Rachel found out. They weren't just trying to move Rachel and the kids in, Diana said grimly. They were racing against time to secure the property before their entire financial house of cards collapsed. Aunt Maggie, who had been quietly reviewing the documents, suddenly spoke up. "Look at these transfer dates," she said, her voice strained. "They align perfectly with the supposed expansion dates for your Uncle Bob's business."
The implication hit me like a truck. Uncle Bob, Jenny's father, had been unknowingly financing David's affair through business loans. I've decided to call a family meeting. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., my parents, Rachel, David, Uncle Bob, and Clara, Jenny, and every other family member who's been pestering me about my house will gather at the very home they tried to steal. I'll present everything: bank statements, hotel receipts, pictures, and email correspondence. Diana has compiled a thorough report, and Aunt Maggie will verify the bank account details. For additional security, I've hired personnel to ensure things don't spiral out of control. You need to be prepared, Diana warned. When people like this are cornered, they tend to lash out. They might blame you for investigating or accuse you of tearing the family apart. I know she's right, but I'm done being the family doormat. Tomorrow, everything changes. The meeting went exactly as Diana predicted, and then some. When I laid out the evidence of David's financial schemes and affair with Jenny, the room erupted. Uncle Bob tried to lunge at David, and the security personnel had to step in to restrain him. Jenny attempted to flee, but Aunt Maggie stood firm, blocking the door. Rachel broke down in tears, sobbing uncontrollably, while my parents sat pale and stunned. The turning point came when I revealed my ACE card, recordings of David and Jenny discussing how they planned to use my house as collateral for loans. My parents' faces drained of all color as the full scope of their so-called investment opportunity became clear. In the aftermath, I made some firm decisions. First, I reported David's financial misconduct to his company's ethics committee. Within 24 hours, he was placed on administrative leave. By the end of the week, he was fired for violating corporate finance regulations, and his professional licenses were revoked. David's licenses were officially revoked, and with Diana's evidence, I helped Uncle Bob pursue legal action to recover the losses to his business. David had completely fabricated the so-called investment strategy, and the damning paperwork made that clear. While the matter was resolved out of court, David was forced to sell off his remaining assets to pay restitution. As for my parents, they had no choice but to face the consequences of their own poor decisions. The bank opened an investigation into their accounts after I reported the questionable activity, leaving them with no financial safety net. Unable to maintain their lifestyle, they were forced to sell their home and now share a cramped, rented apartment, exactly the arrangement they had planned for my house. Rachel, upon learning the full extent of David's betrayal, filed for divorce. She tried to apologize to me, claiming she didn't know about his plans for my property. But considering her active involvement in the attempted break-in, I found her claims hard to believe. Through all of this chaos, the most unexpected and refreshing development has been my relationship with Alex, a 50-year-old wildlife photographer I met at my local rock climbing gym. He spends half the year traveling the world, capturing images of endangered species, and the other half at home working on his projects. Unlike my family, Alex recognized and appreciated my independence and career from the start. Our relationship grew naturally, free of judgment or pressure. We've found a balance that allows us to support each other's ambitions while maintaining our individuality. Last week, Alex set up his photography equipment in my home lab, joking that the lighting was perfect for both my circuit board documentation and his wildlife shoots. Aunt Maggie has become my real family. We meet every week for dinner, sharing stories, laughing about her wild childhood memories, and even exchanging investment advice. Last month, she shocked me by revealing that she had changed her will to name me as her heir. When I protested, she simply said, "You're the daughter I never had, Carla, the one who understands the value of hard work and integrity." The rest of the family has fractured into separate camps. Jenny and David tried to keep their relationship going, but without money flowing in, it fell apart quickly. Jenny moved away, and David took a job at a used car dealership in Nevada, a far cry from his previous executive role. Rachel and my parents still try to contact me occasionally, mostly when they need money. I blocked their numbers and instructed my attorney to handle any correspondence. Their latest attempt was especially pitiful. Rachel left a voicemail, sobbing about how she and the kids were facing eviction. Aunt Maggie later informed me that they had plenty of money for rent, they were just trying to manipulate me emotionally yet again. My career, free from the constant drain of family conflict, has flourished. I recently received a promotion to Chief Technology Officer, a role I might never have achieved if I'd still been bogged down by their emotional manipulation and incessant demands. My house, once the source of so much contention, has truly become my sanctuary. The home lab is now outfitted with state-of-the-art equipment, and one of the bedrooms has been transformed into a library and photography studio where Alex and I work on our respective projects. The security cameras that were originally installed for protection now serve a much more pleasant purpose. They capture footage of the wildlife in my garden, including a family of foxes that have made their home under my deck. Alex even installed specialized cameras to document their activity. The irony isn't lost on me. The house my family said was too big for one person has become a space filled with more love, creativity, and purpose than they could have ever imagined. This experience has taught me that family isn't about blood ties or obligations, it's about respect, understanding, and support. Aunt Maggie, Alex, and my close friends have shown me what real family looks like. They love me for who I am, not for who they think I should be. They celebrate my achievements instead of dismissing them, and they stand by my decisions instead of criticizing them. To everyone who supported me along the way, thank you. Your advice and encouragement gave me the strength to stand firm against my biological family's abuse. To anyone facing similar familial pressure, remember this: you have the right to protect what you've worked hard to achieve. Walking away from toxic relationships isn't selfish, it's necessary for your well-being. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about reclaiming my life, building a foundation of true love and respect, and finally escaping the toxicity of my past. Sometimes, the family you choose is far better than the one you're born into. In the end, my family's schemes cost them everything. But I gained something far more valuable, a real family and a happiness I never thought was possible.